What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back into the CRW podcast here for our 200th episode, and it's going to be a happy one as West Virginia comes out on top of Oklahoma State 38-14 in a dominating win on the road in the Big 12 Conference. So excited to talk about it and cover it here in our Oklahoma State review and reaction episode. At the top here, I just want to give some of my, going away thoughts from that game, kind of look back at some of our keys and how they played themselves out in the game. And then I've got some notes I've jotted down here, kind of some interesting things of note, some tidbits from the game coming out of that one that I want to discuss. And then, of course, we'll take a look at the numbers, select some players for the game, and then do our Big 12 recap. And we will call it an episode here on the 200th episode of the CRW podcast. But let's lead it off here. Let's think back to kind of our, preview going into this game, some of the keys that me and Brad had kind of laid out. The main ones were, on Brad's side, he wanted to talk about, a fast start, Neil Brown having his guys ready after a bye week because that's something that they had struggled with. Check that box right there. Come out, get off to a quick start. Immediately you start with the football. And not only do you start with it, you go down, you get points, you go up 3-0, and you continue to have that fast start throughout that first half, so much so that you get up 24-0, and then, of course, lead 31-7 at halftime. So fast start accomplished. Neil Brown having his guys ready to go after a bye week accomplished. And then for me, I thought it was going to be ball control. Owning the time of possession in this game, keep your defense off the field, keep their defense, which had been struggling, on the field. Check mark there as well. We'll talk about the time possession when we get to covering the team stats here in a bit exactly, but West Virginia absolutely dominated that category as they did most statistical categories throughout this football game, and it made a big difference in this contest. West Virginia's defense seemed fresh. They were flying around, and I know people want to point to, the Oklahoma State defense having a lot of injuries. That is true, and West Virginia did, take advantage of that with their, rushing attack. Oklahoma State's rush defense had been bad prior to some of those injuries, so with those players out, West Virginia was able to take advantage of that even more. But I don't want to lean on that too much because when you flip it on the other side, Oklahoma State's offense didn't really have any injuries. I know that Ollie Gordon got hurt at one point in this game, but West Virginia was already up 31-7 before he was injured. So I think that you got to tip your cap to the West Virginia defense for putting on the performance that they did. And there's no caveats involved there on that side. I think, when you look at the West Virginia offense, maybe some people are still leery of buying into this success and thinking it can be repeated because the injuries Oklahoma State had on the defensive side. But on that other side, that's not the case. Oklahoma State was at full strength on offense. They had a passing offense. They've been averaging over 300 passing yards per game. West Virginia's defense comes out and from the very get-go looks much improved following that bye week, especially pass coverage. That was the best pass coverage we've seen all season, bar none. Second consecutive game, West Virginia's held an opponent to under 200 passing yards. So that's an accomplishment when you had, the lackluster secondary that we started this season with. They looked much improved yesterday in that game against Oklahoma State on Saturday. So got to tip your cap to them. Best West Virginia defensive performance of the season. And if the WVU defense can continue to perform like that, or even, close to that, it's going to give West Virginia a lot of chances moving forward with how their offense has been playing. You've been putting up 30-plus points a lot. This game, you really got the run game going. You ran the ball 60-plus times. And, to go along with what I said about ball control, they had, nearly double the play total that Oklahoma State did. So really all the keys that we were looking for, we checked off, including, we were talking about the run game. We were talking about Jaheim White. Let's have Jaheim White finally have his breakout game. Check that box as well. Jaheim looked phenomenal, looked like the Jaheim we saw towards the end of last season. So that's kind of my just initial thoughts coming out of this game. Is I'm super excited moving forward now because we're starting to see glimpses of the team that I think we all thought that we would see coming into this 2024 season. Took them a little bit to gel, maybe just took them a little bit to get here. I think that bye week certainly helped a lot. But they're hitting it right at the perfect time of the season. Obviously, we got the showdown coming up this Saturday against Iowa State in that Coal Rush night game in Morgantown where, the 11th ranked team in the country is going to be coming into your house. We'll talk about that later in the week when we release our Iowa State preview podcast. But things setting up nicely for West Virginia right now, who currently, don't look now, but in the top 5 of the Big 12 standings, one of the 5 remaining unbeaten conference teams. West Virginia sitting at 2-0 in conference play. 3-2 overall after this 38-14 win over Oklahoma State. So all good things there. And when we were talking about the schedule preseason, we were talking about this 5-game stretch and how important it was for the season. And right now, West Virginia's 2 games into that 5-game stretch and sitting at 2-0. So you can't be happier with the results there. Just got to maintain this success moving forward. So that's kind of just my opening thoughts here. Let me get into some of these tidbits that I jotted down, some interesting notes coming out of the game that I thought were really cool and really things to keep in mind moving forward here in the 2024 season. And then we'll get into talking about some stats from the game, make my players of the game on offense, my player of the game on defense, and then we will do our Big 12 recap before we conclude here. But some interesting notes coming out of the game. This is the 12th straight game or marked the 12th straight game where West Virginia has began with the ball on offense first. And I think Neil Brown kind of spoke to this a little bit, that analytically, when you break it down, if you receive the ball first, you end up having more possessions on the season, which for West Virginia, where offense has kind of been the strength of this team, they really trust their offense a lot. So they want to give them as much possessions as possible. And they feel like that's going to give them a better chance to win. So that's why West Virginia, when they win the toss, they've been electing to receive. And it also kind of works out in their favor because, I'd say most teams or higher than 50% of teams probably when they win that toss, they elect to defer. So either, whether you're winning the toss from receiving or they're winning or deferring, you're getting the football first. And West Virginia's gotten the football first in 12 straight football games now coming out after this Oklahoma State game. West Virginia with back-to-back wins in Stillwater now. Beat them there in 2022, last time we were there, and then beat them, of course, on Saturday with a 38-14 win. And it's the first time ever since joining the Big 12 that West Virginia has had back-to-back wins in Stillwater. So there's an accomplishment there for Neil Brown and his staff doing something West Virginia hasn't done. And that's not the only thing that they did that West Virginia hadn't done since joining the Big 12, because additionally, as I mentioned earlier, WVU now 2-0 in conference play. Second consecutive season that happened. Last year they began 2-0 in conference play as well. And it's the first time WVU has began conference play 2-0 in back-to-back seasons since going all the way back to 2008 and the 2009 seasons. So another great accomplishment for Neil Brown and his staff here, as I think things looked bleak at a period earlier, after that backyard brawl. We were all kind of worried about what team this team could be. But, some of these things really started to stick out to me. That's why I wanted to jot them down and talk about them here, because I think that this staff does deserve some credit now. Got to eat a little bit of crow for us doubting them at periods. And, of course, they got to continue to do it against some of these higher-ranked teams, some of these upper echelon teams in the conference for us to really, be all the way bought back in. But they have really done some good things when you think back to last year and now getting into conference play this year. They definitely have some good things that we need to note and keep in mind for the success of this team. And, also, it's really just what side of the glass do you want to look at? Do you want to be a pessimist? Do you want to be an optimist? Me, I'm choosing to throw the gold and blue glasses on, because West Virginia's only two losses are to undefeated teams. But like I said, you could also flip that over and say, well, the only, teams that we've beaten on this streak are, teams with losing records as well, with Kansas and Oklahoma State. So, it just depends on which side of that camp do you want to be in. Do you want to be the pessimist or do you want to be the optimist? I think I want to choose to be the optimist right now and hope that they continue to, win these games, and maybe that proves to be, the correct path moving forward. We'll see what happens. But also, West Virginia has now scored 30-plus points in 11 of their last 13 games as we continue through these interesting things of note. And that's big because I mentioned, West Virginia has faith in their offense, and obviously so. They really hit their stride late last season, felt like they were clicking on all cylinders throughout the end of that 2023 season. We had yet to kind of feel like that here in 2024. And I don't know if we can necessarily say they're clicking on all cylinders yet, but they're getting very close, and they're playing really good football right now on the offensive side. Yet again, 30-plus against Oklahoma State. In 11 of the last 13 games, they've scored 30-plus points, and that gives you a chance in most games if you're getting over 30. We know West Virginia as a program has a great record when they score 30-plus points, and if West Virginia's defense can, at least keep teams under 30, then you got a great chance moving forward, it seems like, with the success West Virginia's had scoring the football, dating back to last season, the last 13 games, 11 of them they've scored 30-plus in. So then next up, I wanted to talk about West Virginia's success running the football. Obviously, that's kind of been the catalyst of the success West Virginia found in 2023. They're trying to duplicate that and continue it here in 2024. Been a bit of a mixed bag early, but they still have this one streak going, and that's WVU has ran for 140-plus yards as a team in 21 of their last 22 games. So their commitment to the run is working in more ways than one, and hopefully that continues to lead to more wins, because West Virginia does get wins when they run the football successfully. But speaking of, rushing attacks, Oklahoma State vaunted rushing attack coming into 2024. I know it's been a little bit lackluster, throughout this season. There's been some struggles, but you didn't want them to have their get-right game against West Virginia. You knew they were going to try to feed Ollie Gordon the ball. They were going to try and run the football. West Virginia had to commit to stopping that, especially there in front of that home crowd. We mentioned getting off to that fast start would be key. West Virginia was able to do that, and they were able to maintain that Oklahoma State rushing game and do it in a big way. West Virginia held Oklahoma State to their lowest rushing yardage total since 2015. So that's big time right there by West Virginia. One of the best performances the West Virginia defense has had against a rushing offense in nearly a decade. And you do it against, what a lot of people believed going into the season was, a popular pick to win the Big 12. You did it against last year's Doak Walker Award winner, the best running back in the country last season in Ollie Gordon. So yet again, shout out to the West Virginia defense for putting on that good performance. Then a little uniform note here. West Virginia moves to 19-13 all time when wearing the uniform combo they wore against Oklahoma State, which was the blue helmet, the white jersey, and the blue pants. And that's significant because you have a winning record with a road uniform combo. So, that doesn't happen a lot. Wins on the road are hard to come by. Maybe this combo gives West Virginia a little bit of luck. We talked about it in our live stream prior to the game. They wore it for the Fiesta Bowl. They wore it for the Sugar Bowl. I believe they wore it for that 2018 game against Texas. So maybe this combination is a little bit lucky for West Virginia on the road. If you're into that type of superstitious side and you care about uniforms at all, the blue, white, blue combo for West Virginia, 19-13 all time when wearing that combo. The WVU defense, another note for them. They've been doing a great job, not only pressuring the passer, but really forcing negative yardage plays with the way they've been able to get in the backfield. A lot of the times doing it with only a 3 or 4 man rush, and West Virginia's stats bear that out. The WVU defense has recorded at least 4 tackles for loss in 24 of the last 26 games. So West Virginia's defensive line quietly really doing some good things the past couple of seasons there when you look at that number. And then I want to talk yet again about the rushing numbers because that has been the key to success in the Neal Brown era. I did a video on this, a little mini documentary on the Country Roads Webcast YouTube channel just before the season started this year, because it's really something to note because how bad of a place the rushing game was in 2019 when the staff first took over, and how they've been able to develop it here now, 5 years later into what it has become here at WVU. And we know throughout history, West Virginia is successful as a program when they have a strong rushing attack. And in the Neal Brown era, the numbers bear that out as well. Under Neal Brown, WVU now moves to 30-9 when they run for over 100 yards as a team. 30-9 is the record there when the team runs for at least 100 yards. And this was the second game this season West Virginia ran for over 300 yards, and WVU is now 7-0 in the Neal Brown era when they run for over 300 yards as a team. So get that run game going. It's going to lead to some wins there for sure. And then Jed here had some good tweets I wanted to put out here as well. I'm going to read these off. Shout out to the Signal Caller on X there. Well done on Saturday by the West Virginia defense against one of the nation's most talented backs. Ollie Gordon versus WVU. The yards after contact, this is big because we know the big day he had in 2023, 280 rushing yards or whatever it was. So West Virginia was keying on stopping him. But his yards after contact in 2023 game, he had 196 yards after contact. In 2024, West Virginia limited him to 18 yards after contact total in this game. So great job by the West Virginia defense on that one. And then just something that speaks to kind of the balance of the West Virginia offense throughout this season, kind of their ability to get it done in whatever way is required. However, whatever the defense is given them, they've shown different ways to attack them. And Jed with a great stat bearing that out here. Through 5 games, West Virginia averages 217 passing yards and 223 rushing yards per game. This makes the Mountaineers the only Big 12 offense and one of only 4 Power 4 offenses to average at least 215 yards in both passing and running on the season. The other teams doing that are Ohio State, Penn State, and Tennessee, and of course, our West Virginia Mountaineers being the other there. So those were just some interesting tidbits that I, wanted to jot down and cover for you guys here coming out of this game. Some interesting things to keep in mind moving forward on the 2024 season, some things that West Virginia is doing well, because if we're going to be on them when things are down and we're feeling negative as a fan base, we got to be sure and praise them for the positive things they're doing that are coming to light. And, a lot of those are going to start coming to light when you have the performance that West Virginia did in that game on Saturday. 38-14, dominating it from start to finish, was able to kind of put it on cruise control in the second half and, really work some clock, which they did all game, and I think coming out with that fast start was key, as we mentioned in the preview. West Virginia gets that fast start, and, I don't know this for sure because there's no way I could know it for sure. I'm not in the locker room or anything, but I think the way that the team came out and played there, to me, if you were going to give a football team Magic Mind prior to a football game, that's probably what they would come out looking like. They come out with that great energy, but, calm, cool, and collected, kind of that relaxed energy, I like to call it. They were extremely focused. They had great mental clarity. And those are all, signs of things that Magic Mind will provide for you. So, who knows? Maybe they gave him some Magic Mind in the locker room. I don't know that for sure. I'm not making that claim, but I'm just saying if you did, that's what a team would look like. So if you'd like to come out and perform your best, like a lot of the West Virginia players did on Saturday, I can guarantee you Magic Mind will allow you to have that peak performance that you need. No matter what you got going on in your own life, work, school, whatever you got to attack each day, Magic Mind can help you achieve it. Such a great product that provides you, that energy, provides you that focus, reduces that anxiety, all good things that we all need in each of our lives. So can't recommend Magic Mind enough, guys. They also do great things for mental health charities, donating a little bit of percentage with each bottle sold to mental health charities. It's doctor approved. It is all natural ingredients. So not only good for the things that will help you achieve, but good for you as well, good for your body, not going to harm you like some other, energy products will. So, this little mental elixir, this performance shot here, I've got them right here, actually, right with me. You can see my case running down. About time for me to get another shipment of my own. And if you guys want to get a shipment of Magic Mind, we can help you do that with a discounted price here on the Country Roads Webcast here. And you just go to magicmind.com/countrylt. Use the code countrylt20 at checkout, and that will get you 48% off your first subscription or 20% off a one-time purchase if you want to give it a try. And if you do just want to try it, Magic Mind guarantees that you will like it, as do I. And if you don't, they will give you your money back within 100 days of purchase. So just another reason to try it, but definitely try it here using our link and our code, because you'll get that special discount. And I promise you will enjoy Magic Mind. It will help you perform a lot better in your daily activities, just like West Virginia performed great in this game against Oklahoma State. So head to magicmind.com/countrylt and use the code countrylt20 at checkout, and that'll give you 48% off a subscription or 20% off a one-time purchase. We'd really appreciate it, and so would the good folks over at Magic Mind, and most importantly, your mind would, because it's magic for your mind. So definitely want to tell you guys about that. And now that we've got through the interesting news and notes here coming out of that game against Oklahoma State, let's talk a little bit about the statistics now for West Virginia in this win over Oklahoma State. Let's look at some team stats, then we'll get into some individual stats, pick some players of the game, and then get into our Big 12 recap to round out the show here. All right, let's lead it off for the team stats here in this 38-14 win for West Virginia. Just complete domination. As we scroll through this stat sheet, you can really see it bear itself out. 31 first downs for West Virginia versus 11 for Oklahoma State. And if I'm not mistaken, Oklahoma State only ran 40-some plays. So West Virginia nearly picked up as many first downs as Oklahoma State ran plays on offense. That's what type of domination that we had in this football game. Third down efficiency, WVU 9 of 15. And they did a great job on defense on third down as well, holding Oklahoma State to 30%, 3 of 10 on third downs. West Virginia went 2 of 4 on fourth down. Oklahoma State 1 of 2 on fourth down. And West Virginia never had to punt in this football game. The one time that they did trot Ollie Straw out there, he actually got the roughing the kicker penalty. So that wasn't, counted as a punt. West Virginia got to continue that drive. So no punts for West Virginia in this football game. When's the last time you can say that against a, Power 5 opponent? It's been a while. 558 total yards for West Virginia, and they hold Oklahoma State to 227. West Virginia passes for 169. Oklahoma State passes for 191. So, several more attempts there for Oklahoma State, but that's the one stat advantage I think that on this stat sheet you'll see Oklahoma have is they outpassed West Virginia a little bit, but obviously trailing for the game as much as they were, they had to pass the ball a little bit more. And I think what's most impressive is West Virginia completes 10 passes in this game. They only have to throw the ball 16 times, and that's when you know your run game is really working. But 169 yards on only 10 completions is actually not bad at all by West Virginia. That's nearly 17 yards a completion there, so can't be too mad about that. And then we go down here to rushing. West Virginia, this is where you see the domination that I talked about. Lowest rushing total for Oklahoma State since 2015 with only 36 yards. The Mountaineers run up 389 yards, nearly hit the 400-yard rushing mark. They did cross that 400-yard rushing mark as a team one time last season, so it's not like this is something that we're new going back to 2023. For West Virginia, this is something that we hopefully can become more and more accustomed to, because when you run for over 300 yards, that means the other team knows it's coming, but it's still getting there. So that's just a great job. Shout out to Matt Moore and the West Virginia offensive line. Shout out to West Virginia running backs. Shout out to Garrett Green and Nico Marchio as well. We'll talk about the individual numbers momentarily, but everyone that touched the football running it here did a great job for the Mountaineers, and everyone blocking there, the offensive line and tight ends with a great job as well for West Virginia to have 389 yards, and they ran the ball 65 times. So great job by West Virginia to, just continue to pound that rock throughout the game, stick with what's working, and West Virginia continue to do that, averaging 6 yards per rush in this football game. The Mountaineers also only committed 2 penalties. Oklahoma State commits 3, and West Virginia wins the turnover battle, something we haven't been able to say a lot throughout this 2024 season, but they did a great job in this game, picking up 2 interceptions on Oklahoma State. Jaheim Joseph with a great play on one, kind of a robber coverage to grab that one, and then Josiah Trotter, as Alan Bowman looks like he's trying to throw the ball away, doesn't get it out far enough, and it's a hell of an athletic grab there by Josiah Trotter to make the interception and get the toes down in bounds there for the other interception West Virginia picks up. And then this is the big one, guys. I talked about this being my key to victory going into this game, as I thought ball control would go a long way for West Virginia. I think they took that to heart, guys. 42 minutes and 40 seconds opposed to 17 minutes for Oklahoma State. West Virginia held the ball for nearly 43 of the 60 minutes in this football game. I mean, you can't do a better job than that. Anytime, if you have the ball for 40 plus minutes, chances are you're probably going to win the football game. Unless the other team just has, explosive, fast-paced offense and they're scoring quickly, and that's why you're having it 40 minutes. Most of the time, you're going to win the football game if you have that type of time of possession advantage, especially West Virginia, the way that they play and the way they kind of use that to their advantage. It's something we've kind of been missing this season. I think that's why one thing that's so exciting about this game is we get to see kind of the version of West Virginia we were all expecting and hoping to see heading into 2024 here, is a team that runs the football well, has an opportunistic defense that kind of looks like they're starting to gel a little bit maybe, and then, of course, possesses the football and doesn't beat themselves, doesn't make mistakes. You don't turn the football over. You have under 5 penalties. You dominate the time of possession. That's kind of the formula for West Virginia dating back to last season. We finally see it pull through here, and we see West Virginia absolutely dominate the stat sheet here on the team stats side of things. Now let's take a look at the individual numbers, and then we'll pick some players of the game on offense and defense as we do that. All right, individually for WVU, Garrett Green and Nico Marchiol both see in action after Garrett Green suffered the brief shoulder injury. I think we were all kind of worried with him trotting off the field there, kind of holding the arm, wasn't moving it too much, but then was able to check back into this football game and still perform well after that. So hopefully his shoulder's okay moving forward. Seems to be no negative signs that it's not going to be all right moving forward. But he throws for 159 yards on 9 of 15. Nico Marchiol only throws the one pass, but it was a great one. 10-yard touchdown pass to Traylon Ray, and it was in between, a corner and a safety. Traylon Ray had ran a slant route, beat that corner, and Nico threw an absolute dart in there, a dot for that touchdown. Great throw by Nico, and he performed really well when he came into this football game. I think the things the staff had been telling us about him proved to be true, that they don't have to change the offense up any. They can run the same offense. It's not going to be like it was in 2023 when he came in and they had to shrink the playbook, change their style of play. West Virginia was still wide open, still running the same things that they were with Garrett Green, and still having the same success as well with Nico Marchiol on the field. So that's great to see, especially in a conference matchup against a power opponent. West Virginia rushing yards. Jaheim White, the breakout game that we've been wanting to see, finally occurs. 19 carries, 158 yards, and a touchdown, over 8 yards per carry. And that looked like the Jaheim White that we saw all late last season. Hopefully that really kickstarts things for him and they continue to perform like that now moving forward in 2024. Garrett Green, 10 carries, 86 yards, and a touchdown. Some really good runs there. His touchdown was they were trying to set up a screenplay. Instead, he sees the middle of the field part like the Red Seas, bursts through there, gets a touchdown. Also had a long run on the run that he got injured on. CJ Donaldson, 20 carries, 77 yards, 2 touchdowns for CJ. And the one touchdown was a beauty with the stiff arm on the defender, then runs on into the end zone. Great stuff there. And I really like what I see about West Virginia giving these backs carries in this game, both of them right at 20 carries. I think that's a good sign for West Virginia moving forward. You'd like to see both CJ and Jaheim get, 15 plus touches per games. They can be your workhorses. They can be the guys that get it done for you. And in this game, they definitely did that. And then got to talk about Nico Marchiol running the football well. When he got in there, 7 carries, 46 yards. One of those a QB draw when he absolutely truck stick Trey Rucker, who has, been one of the leading tacklers in all of Power 4 football. And Nico Marchiol absolutely lowered the shoulder on him. And of course, as I've talked about, it's a different running style for Nico, but still a great runner. I've compared it to kind of Tim Tebow. He's not as fast as Garrett Green, but he's a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. And that's kind of who he reminds me of with the way he runs the football. Maybe it's the left-handedness. Maybe it's, the bigger size at nearly 230 pounds. But I really like seeing Nico run the football well in this game. And I think maybe moving forward, West Virginia has found something, because it seems like even later in that game when they got into some short yard situations, they were bringing Nico in, running some QB powers and stuff like that with him. So maybe Nico will have a little package for him in this offense moving forward, and the way he played, maybe he deserves it. Jalen Anderson getting work late, 3 carries, 19 yards. So good to see Jalen Anderson when he did get his action, that he made the most of it. Nearly 7 yards per carry there, a little over 6 yards per carry for Jalen Anderson, and looked good on his runs when he got in there late. He got in there, as did Dewar Hubbard, who had 1 carry for a yard. Did get Rick Darius Farmer on a jet sweep for 4 yards. Day Farmer going to continue to get some more action moving forward. Neil Brown mentioned that in his radio show this week, so we'll probably continue to see that true freshman pop up in the stats. And then receiving-wise, yet again, a great game for Hudson Clement. Really is emerging as the alpha receiver on this team, and I think you got to give him, 5 to 10 targets per game moving forward, I think, because it seems like every time West Virginia targets him, good things happen. In this game, he kept making plays. The one that stands out, of course, is the over-the-shoulder one-handed grab. First of all, great ball placement on the throw because there was good coverage there, and Hudson Clement with the smothering coverage, still able to track the ball over his shoulder and catch it with one hand. Phenomenal grab by Hudson Clement there on one of his that amounted to 64 yards receiving. Traylon Ray, 3 catches, 37 yards, and of course the touchdown that I mentioned there from Nico Marchiol. Traylon Davis. How about Traylon Davis making a play in the passing game? We were doing the watch party on the CRW YouTube channel, and I was surprised. I thought it was Cole Taylor. I was like, oh my gosh, that's Traylon Davis. He's making a big play in the passing game. And it's good to see that because he's always the guy sticking his nose in there, helping block for the West Virginia run game. So good to see Traylon Davis get involved and make a big play in the passing game with this 31-yard reception. Cole Taylor gets 2 catches for 25 yards. Rodney Gallagher gets 1 for 12 yards. So not a lot of names there as we're used to seeing in the receiving game. But like I said, West Virginia only completes 10 passes. They run the ball 60-plus times because that's what's working. So shout out to West Virginia sticking with what's working and allowing that run game to succeed and continuing to feed it. Moving forward, West Virginia's receivers will need to make more plays. Probably there'll be games where the passing game will have to step up because people are really keying on West Virginia's running game. But West Virginia really showed the ability to get it done on the ground on this one. So my player of the game on offense, you guys probably know where I'm going to go if you know me at all because he's been my favorite player on the team. I've been waiting on him to break out this season, and that's Jaheim White. He gets my player of the game on offense award. A lot of guys you could go to in this one, but I'm going to go with Jaheim. 158 yards rushing. He only had a little under 200 coming into this game, so really ups that total on the season for him. Does it on 19 carries, 8 yards per carry, and gets up with the touchdown run on the outside zone. And I like this right here, going back to Jorden again, who provided this on social media. Jaheim White forced 11 missed tackles against Oklahoma State on Saturday, equaling the career best he established versus Cincinnati last year. As a team, WVU is now forced 22 missed tackles against Oklahoma State and is averaging 12 missed tackles forced per game, which is up from the 9.1 they averaged per contest last year. So the West Virginia running backs doing a good job making people miss, doing a good job delivering stiff arms, and really making the most out of those runs when they get into those one-on-one situations at the second level with safeties and linebackers. And you saw that consistently throughout this game. And Jaheim White did it 11 times, forces 11 missed tackles in this football game. So shout out to Jaheim White. His breakout performance here in 2024 hopefully proves that better things are on the horizon moving forward for him, and he can continue to look like this for the rest of the season. But he definitely secures my player of the game on offense here as we wrap up the offensive individual statistics. Let's flip over to the defensive side for West Virginia, where best defensive performance of the season, best pass coverage of the season, best all-around defensive performance, whatever you want to call it. The West Virginia defense showed up and showed out after that bye week, and hopefully that builds confidence for them moving forward as they face, some good offenses here over the next couple of weeks. They're going to need to have another performance like this one. But like I said, Oklahoma State, with the injuries they had, those were on the defensive side. This was an Oklahoma State offense that came into this game, top 3 in the Big 12 in passing yards per game. West Virginia held them under 200 yards passing. So, the West Virginia defense, the job they did, can't be enough said about that, especially with the heat that they've gotten earlier in the season. We got to praise them after this type of performance. And some of the numbers here, you get 6 total tackles from Josiah Trotter, 5 from Ty French, who quietly had a really good football game, had half a tackle for loss as well. Tyron Bradley, his cohort there at the spur position, ends up with another TFL, continues, what's been a great couple of weeks for him there. 5 total tackles for him also. KK Tarnu gets in this game, 4 total tackles. Good to see him, bounce back from some early season struggles. Jaheim Joseph, I thought, looked really good in this football game as well. 4 total tackles. I mentioned the interception, and he had another one where he nearly broke up a pass. It just went over his fingertips in a similar coverage there where he was kind of playing a little bit of a robber coverage there as well. And 3 total tackles for TJ Jackson, a sack for Fatorma Mulba, and a sack for Hammond Russell. And both of those are big because 2 sacks for West Virginia doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot when you were facing a team that had been, number 1 in the country at giving up sacks. Oklahoma State had only given up 1 sack prior to this football game all season long, and West Virginia gets 2 in one game. So that shows the West Virginia pass rush that was, currently near the top of the country in QB pressures heading into this one is able to get it done even against good pass protecting offensive lines that Oklahoma State has shown to be earlier in this season. So West Virginia's pass rush is going to continue to be a force moving forward in 2024, and that's big for this West Virginia defense if they can continue to do that. You also get TFL half a TFL from Trey Lathan, a TFL from Aiden Garnes, who I thought really stood out in this game, not only in pass coverage, but coming up there from his cornerback spot, despite being smaller in stature. He was delivering some blows, delivering some hits there when Oklahoma State would check the ball down, or he would have to get someone that's, they're throwing a screen pass to. I thought Aiden Garnes really stood out at corner there. So there's some of the numbers, and I mentioned the two players getting interceptions were Jaheim Joseph and Josiah Trotter. And I think for me, my player of the game on defense, I'm going to have to give it to Josiah Trotter. West Virginia's run game, he kind of is one of the guys that leads that catalyst, shooting through the gaps. And I think that him and his fellow linebackers really maintained good gap integrity on the run plays here. They forced things back inside. They covered the cutback lanes. They didn't allow missed tackles to result in larger runs. So I think all in all, they did a good job with that. And really just that athletic interception that I talked about earlier by Trotter, where he's able to catch the football and get the feet down. You don't see that a lot from a linebacker. West Virginia's defensive backs had a couple, picks this year that they've dropped. The linebacker gets the shot at one, doesn't drop it, and taps his feet. But I do want to shout out, the other guys. I mentioned Aiden Garnes. He could have had a pick six here as well. I think all in all, it's a great team performance for the West Virginia defense. But if I'm picking a player of the game, I'm giving it to Josiah Trotter on the defensive side. So that's what I've got there as far as my player of the game on offense, my player of the game on defense as we wrap up our look at the stats here from this 38-14 win for West Virginia, who, as I said, now moves to back into the winning side of things, up above 500, 3-2 on the season overall, 2-0 in Big 12 conference play. And that's the most important stat in a season now with the 12-team playoff, where conference play is important as ever. West Virginia remains unbeaten in the Big 12, a conference that looks absolutely wide open. And West Virginia is going to have a chance to compete moving forward, especially with some big games upcoming over the next couple of weeks, both those being at home and then, of course, hitting the road as well to take on Arizona. But in that 5-game stretch, we mentioned if they could at least win one of those road games, it'd be big. They've already done it, winning one at Oklahoma State. So hopefully now they're able to, protect their home field with some top 25 opponents coming in what looks to be a wide open Big 12 race. And speaking of that Big 12, now we got to take a look at the results from this past week here. Week 6 in the Big 12 conference resulted yet again some surprising results. That seems to be the theme moving forward here in the conference throughout 2024. Wide open race, seems like it's anyone's game right now because upsets continue to happen. People that you think are locks to win aren't necessarily winning. And, the conference standings, there's 5 teams with an unbeaten conference record, and West Virginia is one of them. So why not the Mountaineers moving forward? But let's do a little recap of the Big 12 results from this past weekend here as we continue to wrap up our episodes with our Around the Big 12 segment from this past week. On Friday, we got one of the more surprising results of the week right away there before we even got into the Saturday slate, as Houston, who had been, pretty much, I think they were scoreless in Big 12 play prior to this game, right? They'd been shut out a couple of times in a row. If I'm not mistaken, they make a bit of a quarterback change. He proves to be explosive, breaks off a 72-yard run, and on the road in Fort Worth, Houston goes in and beats TCU, and really, they beat them pretty soundly. They dominated this football game throughout the majority of it, and they secure a 30-19 win over TCU. So Houston, with a shocker on the weekend, taking down the Horned Frogs. Shout out to Houston. Shout out to Willie Fritz. A lot of people were wondering if the team was maybe lost, if if it was going to be a rough season, they were going to be, maybe the worst team in the conference. How about them able to come out, right the ship, correct some things, make some adjustments, and get a big win on the road in the Big 12. And as I said earlier, in regards to West Virginia's wins on the road in the Big 12, not easy to come by. Shout out to Willie Fritz getting his first one there, Houston, and Houston upsetting TCU there on Friday. Moving into Saturday, obviously the Mountaineers with a 38-14 win. We've covered that one extensively now. Iowa State takes down Baylor 43-21. So the Cyclones will be undefeated rolling into Morgantown this Saturday. They're 5-0, and it's truly fitting, for the Coal Rush game. We'll talk more about that when it comes around, but you guys know as well as I do, 2018, West Virginia was undefeated, rolled into Ames, Iowa for a blackout, and Iowa State pulled the upset, stunned the Mountaineers, knocked them out of the, unbeaten status in that game. Now here we are, 6 years later, West Virginia has a chance to do the same. Iowa State's rolling in unbeaten. West Virginia's hitting them with the Coal Rush because we Coal Rush. We don't black out, but same thing there. Crowds encouraged to wear black. We're going to be in the black uniforms and have a chance to do the same to them, knock them out of the unbeatens as well. And funny enough, it's almost to the day as well. That game in 2018 was October 13th. This one on Saturday will be October 12th. So funny how things work. West Virginia with the chance to, have a what goes around comes around moment against the Cyclones this coming week. But Iowa State, up at the top of the conference right now, ranked 11th in the country after they take down Baylor 43-21, and really a strong second half, strong final three quarters from Iowa State lead to that. And they're looking like a balanced offense. Two really good receivers. Rocco Beck can throw. He can run a little bit, and they have a couple good running backs as well. And we know they always have a good defense. So West Virginia going to have their work cut out for them, and we're excited to preview that game coming up later this week. You can hear our predictions as to who we think will win between West Virginia and Iowa State on our Iowa State Preview and Predictions podcast, releasing later this week. So be on the lookout for that. But moving on in the results here for the Big 12, and not a great result here for the conference as UCF. I got to eat crow on this one. I thought they'd be able to go in on the road and get the win in the Swamp, but Swamp is a really tough place to play. And shout out to the co-host Brad here at the CRW. He picked the Gators, and he was right on with this one. 24-13. UCF would have been a very explosive offense earlier in the season, struggling now in back-to-back weeks. Got to wonder what happens for them moving forward. They've also had some players unexpectedly jump into the transfer portal all of a sudden, so not too sure what's going on with UCF, but hopefully Malzahn's able to get things corrected because a lot of people were talking about them maybe being a dark horse in this conference, and all of a sudden that's kind of slipping through their grasp, but they've got a chance. At least this was a non-con matchup. They got a chance to get right back in, the thick of things within the conference if they can find ways to win moving forward, but had a chance to, have some bragging rights within the state of Florida if they were able to pull this one off. Instead, the Gators come out on top 24-13 over UCF. And then Arizona State and Kansas, man. Arizona State wins it 35-31, but Kansas, you hate to see the way that they're losing football games right now because you watch Kansas, they're not a bad team. They really had, things working in that game. Jalen Daniels was breaking touchdown runs. Their offense looked all right. But yet again, they lose a game in the final, minutes, final seconds. You go back to UNLV, was able to mount a game-winning drive against them. Of course, we know what the Mountaineers did, coming back down 11 in the final 4 minutes, score a game-winning touchdown with less than 30 seconds to go. And yet again, up 31-28 on Arizona State, and Arizona State marches down the field and scores the game-winning touchdown with, less than a minute to go in that football game. So Kansas right now, I think they need to find a way to, close out games and end up on the winning side of things. That's really been their problem thus far in 2024 is, finding ways to lose games at the end rather than ways to, close out victories. If they can do that, maybe they can get things corrected. But, man, it's off to a brutal start there for Lance Leipold in Kansas after they let another one slip through their fingers. And how about Arizona State, man? Not a lot of people saw them coming with the year that they're having thus far. So shout out to them. Shout out to Kenny Dillingham, leading them to a Big 12 win over Kansas at home, 35-31. They come out on top in that one. And then what was our game of the week in the Big 12 this week here on the CRW, Texas Tech and Arizona. I thought Arizona would be able to get the win at home, but instead it's Texas Tech. And we thought Arizona would be one of the teams up at the top of the conference, 2-0 in conference play. But how about Texas Tech, man? They win at 28-22. And, I think a few weeks ago when we were doing our recaps, we definitely would have never saw this coming when Texas Tech needed overtime to beat Abilene Christian, who threw the ball all around on them. It was a 56-55, 52-51, something like that. It was a game played in the 50s against Abilene Christian, and people were thinking Texas Tech's defense looks terrible. They're not going to be very good in the Big 12 moving forward, but hey, they were able to get that righted as well because they play a team with a good passing offense in Arizona on the road. We know the weapons they have with T-Mac and Fafita and those guys, and they hold them to 22 points. So shout out to the Texas Tech defense for bouncing back as well. I think both us as Mountaineer fans can look and say, hey, one season or an early season does not make an entire season. Things can change moving forward because West Virginia's passing defense had looked terrible in the past 2 weeks, looked improved. Texas Tech's passing defense earlier in the season looked bad, but now looks improved, and they are looking like maybe a potential contender as well, as they're the ones that moved to 2-0 in conference, right up there with the Mountaineers. So that's kind of the results. And as it sits now, we have 5 teams with unbeaten conference records, those being Iowa State, BYU, WVU, Colorado, and Texas Tech are your 5 teams sitting at the top of the Big 12 standings with undefeated conference records. So, as I said earlier, why not West Virginia? It's going to be fun watching this Big 12 conference throughout this 2024 season to see how things play out. But the Mountaineers have a shot at it, and it starts this coming weekend in Morgantown against Iowa State. If you can win that one, then people really start talking about you as a contender in this conference, as Iowa State is the number 11 team in the country. So West Virginia has their work cut out for them, but has all the opportunity in the world moving forward to prove that they're a contender in this conference. And so far through two conference games, they haven't ruled that out as a possibility. They found a way to win both. And of course, get the big win on the road this week in Stillwater was massive to set up this showdown. This atmosphere is going to be great against Iowa State, guys. Can't wait to talk about that game and preview it. Like I said, we'll have that out later this week, but that will pretty much wrap us up here for episode 200, the Oklahoma State review and reaction. Talked about my thoughts, gave some interesting tidbits from the game. We covered the stats, the players of the game, and of course, our Big 12 recap there to round things out here with our Week 6 conference recap there in our Around the Big 12 segment. But other than that, I just want to mention to you guys that I really appreciate y'all tuning in this episode, whether you watched it here on YouTube. If you did that, hey, just hit that little thumbs up button. Give this video a like. Helps a ton with that YouTube algorithm. And be sure to subscribe here to the Country Roads Webcast channel. Ton of Mountaineer football coverage always coming out from us here on the CRW. But we appreciate you listening on the audio side as well. You can find that on any podcast platform you like, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, you name it. Just search for Country Roads Webcast. Follow us there. And if you are listening to us on that audio side, be sure to leave us a rating, preferably a 5-star one. If you would, that would really help us a lot. And we'd be really appreciative of that, just like we're appreciative of the guys over at WVSportsNow.com for hosting our episodes on their website as well. So appreciate you guys tuning into this episode any way that you choose to do so. Multiple options for you, multiple outlets for you to do so there. And hopefully you'll continue to do it throughout this 2024 season. Like I said, next up on episode 201, we'll be previewing this big game against Iowa State, nationally ranked team, two teams battling at the top of the conference right now, and West Virginia gets them in Morgantown for a night game in Morgantown. So it should be a lot of fun to talk about. Can't wait to cover it, guys. Can't wait to continue to cover this team moving forward through this 2024 season, and hopefully a lot more wins just like this one we picked up that moves West Virginia to 3-2 overall on the season and currently 2-0 in Big 12 conference play. So let's enjoy it while we can and get ready for a big showdown this upcoming weekend. As always, I'm Jorden Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those